Marvel Studios and Sony Pictures have dropped our first main trailer for Spider-Man Far From Home, which gives us our first look at the world of the MCU post-Avengers Endgame. And oh boy, has the entire fabric of this universe changed drastically. There's plenty to break down here, so let's get into it. The trailer opens up to Peter Parker lamenting the death of Tony Stark at the end of Avengers Endgame. He sits atop a building in New York City and looks out over a large mural of Iron Man, telling us that it's likely the world is mourning Stark as well. This is reiterated later in the trailer where we see an Iron Man memorial set up in the city, as well as in this shot of Peter in school with student drawings of Iron Man pinned to the back wall. In this dire moment in the MCU universe, it's almost as if the world's people are now looking up to Stark as a martyr or some kind of deity. This also indicates his impact on the MCU's future is probably going to be pretty enormous. The trailer makes a pretty big point at telling us that Spider-Man is going to be the new face of the MCU going forward, perhaps against the word of Kevin Feige, who has continuously mentioned that that role will go to Captain Marvel. Happy mentions to Peter that he doesn't think Stark would have done what he did if he didn't know that he would be there after he was gone. Stark has legitimately sacrificed himself with the intention of Peter taking over his role. The next scene sees Spidey taking down a bunch of gangsters in the Iron Spider suit that Stark built for him, and when the police arrive on the scene they ask, "You gonna be the next Iron Man?" And later in the trailer Peter mentions that the world needs the next Iron Man. Again, this all really makes it known that Spidey's involvement in the future of the MCU is likely going to be pretty lengthy and pretty huge. There's been debate about whether Sony would take Spidey out of the MCU as soon as their contract with Disney was up, but if this trailer is any indication, I think he's going to be around for quite a while. After the success of Spidey in the franchise and the enormity of Endgame, Sony would be crazy to pull him out, and I think it would be to the detriment of Tony Stark's character arc, who quite literally sacrificed himself for the future of this character. I also think Sony would be crazy considering that they are literally reaping the financial benefits of these solo movies while Marvel is doing all the hard work. Happy Hogan actually appears multiple times in this trailer as well, in the beginning, the middle, and in the end, which tells us that he's probably going to have a pretty big role in this movie too, perhaps even bigger than we'd imagined beforehand. I for one assume that he'd probably just have a passing cameo just like he did in Homecoming, but it's certainly looking like he may end up being the surrogate mentor to Peter that Stark once was, or that he will now end up acting as Peter's own bodyguard. What's interesting to note in the background of this conversation between Happy and Peter is this poster for an exhibition fighting match, which is offering $100 to any man who can stay in the ring for 3 minutes with Crusher Hogan. For those familiar with Spider-Man lore, this is a moment ripped directly from 1962's Amazing Fantasy number 15, the first appearance of Spider-Man in Marvel Comics, where Peter does in fact fight off against the Crusher in the ring, disguised as the Spider, defeats him and wins $100 for staying in the ring for longer than 3 minutes with him. This moment from Spider-Man's origin story is also shown in the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man film from 2002, where Peter instead fights off against a character known as Bonesaw McGee, who was created specifically for the film. Looking back at the poster though, we can also see that Bonesaw McGee is listed as a fighter in this exhibition match. There's a few other names on the poster, but they seem a little bit obscured and I can't quite make them out. Now it's quite possible that this poster is an old one that's just lying around Peter's school and is a nice little nod back to the character's origins in both the comics and in cinema, or it could indicate that the exhibition match may in fact make a brief appearance in the film itself. I'm thinking that it probably won't, as the point of Peter fighting in the match to begin with was to test his powers out against an adversary and earn some desperately needed money. So it could be that this is a match that Peter actually did fight in prior to us even meeting him in the MCU, given that we never actually got to see his origin story play out in this iteration of the character. So it would be nice to know that the origin story that we all know and love is practically canon to the MCU. The trailer also further develops the relationship between Peter and MJ, and though she is a different MJ from the comics, in the comics she's Mary, in the film she's Michelle, it looks like Peter won't be without his love interest in the MCU. What's also interesting here is that just like the MJ of the original Spider-Man series of films, this MJ has also figured out that Peter is Spider-Man, which definitely opens up grander narrative possibilities, especially in the MCU, where most heroes' private identities are known publicly, something that was established right back in the first Iron Man. I love that that's a narrative thread that is continuing to today. We get quite a few shots of Peter's carefree international school trip before Nick Fury busts in and turns it all upside down. Both Fury and Maria Hill look to have a substantial role in this film too. It will be interesting to find out what their exact deal is here though. Are they slowly rebuilding S.H.I.E.L.D. from the ground up? Are they operating an underground splinter cell of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Are they developing an entirely new agency? Who knows? But whatever it is, it looks like they have quite a few agents and a fairly decent sized operation going on. Here Fury and Hill enlist Spidey to fight against a new threat in a fight that they likely would have given to Stark had he still been alive. This further tells me that Peter's role in the MCU is going to be huge as he's being handballed a lot of Stark's old work. The trailer gives us a couple of nods to other characters who Peter feels could handle the work better than him, showing us that this movie is definitely going to be dealing with Peter's incredibly human struggles in dealing with issues he may not feel quite ready to tackle. Here it said that Thor is off-world, likely traveling somewhere with the Asgardians of the galaxy during the events of the upcoming Guardians 3, and it's also said that Captain Marvel is unavailable, perhaps fighting another threat on Earth or in some other distant universe. We are properly introduced to the MCU's version of Mysterio here, who appears to be a good guy, but could in fact end up being a bad guy. He's a bit of an anti-hero and an anti-villain in the comics. He's got a whole bundle of mystery going on in the comics, and I think he will in the MCU as well. He's introduced to us by Nick Fury as Mr. Beck, so we know that he will in fact take on the same alias as he does in the comics, Quentin Beck. What is very interesting about this version of Mysterio is that he's come from an alternate Earth, having traveled to our Earth via a hole that was ripped into our dimension as a result of Thanos' snap. This is a further indication of the enormous ramifications of the Infinity Wars on the universe. Peter even specifically mentions the word multiverse by name, offering us our first major introduction to the multiverse in the MCU, which is going to drastically change the entire franchise and open up entirely new possibilities for storytelling. While Endgame opened us up to the idea of alternate realities existing, Far From Home shows us that alternate realities can collide and coexist. It's quite obvious that the multiverse can be used in vast ways in the franchise. It can be used to bring back dead characters, though I kind of feel like that would be a little bit of a cop-out, but it could, most excitingly, be used to introduce new characters, such as the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, who could have been existing in other universes the entire time. It could also be used to link the MCU to other franchises, such as Sony's Spider-Verse, including Venom, and maybe even the animated Into the Spider-Verse. Again, this trailer shows us the big bads of the film, the Elementals, including Hellfire, who can generate flames, Hydron, who can control water, Magnum, who can manipulate earth, rock, and minerals, and Zephyr, who can control air and wind. In the original Elementals arc in 1977, the team fought off against Carol Danvers, then Miss Marvel, and were defeated by her. Perhaps this is why we got a brief nod towards Captain Marvel in the trailer, or perhaps we could even see a brief appearance of her during the film. It's quite possible that Mysterio is in cahoots with the Elementals, a typical double cross, and Danvers is called to Earth to assist Peter. Unlikely, but could be pretty cool. It certainly looks like the invasion of the Elementals, who we assume have also entered Earth from Mysterio's reality, is going to cause mass destruction, and Peter's definitely going to need an assist if it turns out that Beck is a villain as well. The trailer doesn't introduce us to any new Spidey suits. We get the Iron Spider, as previously mentioned, the classic Spidey suit, the darker coloured Spidey suit, and the black stealth suit. We also get a brief introduction to some new Stark tech, which seems to be aboard one of Stark's Quinjets, and in one moment, Parker seems to put on an old pair of Stark sunglasses. Perhaps there is some kind of video message from Stark recorded in these glasses. It would be great to get like a mini AI appearance of Tony Stark in this film. All in all, this movie looks fantastic. There's plenty of great reveals here that get me all kinds of excited for the future of the MCU. The tone of the piece looks great. It's going to be pretty bittersweet and pretty quirky, but overall it gives us a great idea of where the MCU is going next, and I gotta say, I bloody love it. How about you guys out there? How did you like the new Spider-Man Far From Home trailer? What are your thoughts on the MCU's future, and did you pick up on anything else that I didn't? I want to know! Throw away in the comments below and let me know your thoughts. If this is your first time viewing one of my videos, you like what you've seen, you'd like to see more like this in the future, then please don't forget to hit that big old subscribe button up on your screen right now, and also hit that like button down below if you're feeling extra generous. Also, don't forget to check out my many social media accounts, and please consider supporting me over on Patreon. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you have a wonderful day.